The gathering storm. The stars above the council world shined like cold diamonds. Inside the crystal hall, the Galactic Council gathered. Leaders from dozens of alien empires sat in their seats, voices already rising in anger. Some shouted about border wars, others demanded trade routes. The air was heavy with distrust. It was not a meeting of peace, but of fear. Then, the great doors opened, and a human stepped inside. His name was Marcus Heil, and his presence drew every eye in the chamber. Tall, with sharp eyes and a calm face, he wore the black uniform of a diplomat. But something about him made the aliens uneasy. Some leaned closer to whisper. Others leaned back as if danger had entered the room. Humans were new to the council and already feared. They had come from a small world, but they rose too fast. Their ships were strong, their soldiers unyielding, their minds unpredictable. And Marcus Harley was their voice here, the single human chosen to speak for Earth. One insectoid senator clicked his mandibles and hissed, "Why do we allow this human among us?" A scaled lizard lord slammed his tail, agreeing. "They are dangerous. They are not like us. They hide secrets." But Marcus only walked forward, calm, silent, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. He bowed slightly before the council's high speaker and took his place. Before the speaker could begin, alarms screamed across the chamber. The crystal walls flickered with warning lights, red and sharp. Enemy ships detected in orbit. A voice cried from the comms. The chamber shook as explosions lit the sky outside. Panic spread like fire. Some senators leapt from their seats, shouting orders to guards. Others screamed that the planet's shields would protect them. But the shaking of the floor said otherwise. The high speaker turned to Marcus, his eyes narrow. "You knew this was coming, human," he demanded. The council erupted in accusations, voices overlapping. "This is your fault. You brought them here. You humans are cursed." But Marcus did not rise, did not shout back. He simply looked upward, toward the ceiling where faint tremors of battle could be felt. His face was calm, too calm for a man whose life might end within minutes. That calmness chilled the aliens more than the attack itself. One senator, a feathered creature with bright golden eyes, noticed something strange. Marcus's lips were moving, but not to the council. He was speaking softly, words meant for no one in the room. A tiny glow from his collar revealed a communicator hidden in his uniform. "What is he doing?" The senator whispered, fear in his voice. Another leaned close and muttered, "He is calling someone." Or something. Yet no one dared approach, for Marcus's stillness was like that of a predator waiting for the right moment. Outside, the enemy fleet pressed harder. Energy blasts struck the planet's defenses, breaking through layer by layer. The council guards reported that the orbital platforms were falling. Ships that had defended the system for centuries were burning in the sky. And yet, Marcus Hawley sat in silence, his hand resting lightly on the table, his eyes half closed, as though he was listening not to the council, not to the chaos, but to a distant voice. Finally he spoke, his words calm, heavy like iron against the noise of panic. "Stay inside the chamber," he said. "Do not move." The room froze. Every alien turned to him, some in rage, others in fear. "Why should we listen to you?" One senator spat. Marcus lifted his gaze, sharp and cold. "Because they are not here for you," he said softly. "They are here for me." The words fell like a blade across the chamber. For a moment there was silence. Even the alarms seemed distant, as if the universe held its breath. And then the storm outside grew louder. Ships roaring through the skies, explosions flashing against the crystal windows. But Marcus did not flinch. He leaned back, folding his hands as though this attack was nothing more than expected. The council stared at him with wide eyes, confusion mixing with dread. Why was the human so calm? What secret did he carry that even an invading fleet seemed to orbit around him? One alien whispered the old rumor that had followed humans into the stars. Where a human walks, death walks beside them. The chamber lights flickered, shadows moving across the walls. The council members huddled closer together, arguments forgotten. They looked to Marcus not for blame now, but for answers, and Marcus, with that same calm voice, whispered to himself, "It begins." The shadows at the door. Alarms still screamed across the council world, shaking the walls of the crystal chamber. Outside, the skies burned red with fire from enemy ships, each blast shaking the ground. Inside, the Galactic Council was no longer arguing about trade or borders. Now they argued about survival. But through all the chaos, Marcus Halley, the human diplomat, remained unerringly calm. The high speaker shouted for more guards. But reports came back that soldiers were already dying. The defense grid had fallen faster than anyone believed possible. The mighty fleets of the Council, ships that once stood as symbols of power, were shattered like glass in the void. And the enemies were not even showing their full strength. Why are they here? A reptilian senator hissed, slamming his claws against the table. This planet is protected by the Council. No one dares attack us. But Marcus's earlier words echoed in their minds. They are not here for you. They are here for me. The senators stared at him with fear and suspicion. Some believed he had brought this doom. Others thought he was part of it. And yet, none could deny his stillness felt wrong, too controlled, as though he already knew the script of what was happening. The crystal doors to the chamber shook with a thunderous boom. Guards rushed to brace them, weapons drawn. But another boom followed, stronger, sharper. Something is trying to get in. A guard cried. The chamber froze. Every senator watching the doors as shadows moved behind them. The lights flickered. The great walls hummed with strange static. And then, the doors slid open, not from outside force, but from within, as if hacked. By unseen hands, dark figures slipped into the room, silent, swift, almost invisible assassins. They wore cloaking armor that bent the light. Their shapes only half seen, long blades glimmered in their hands. Weapons meant not for war, but for quick, personal killing. They moved like shadows, cutting down guards with silent strikes. Blood stained the crystal floor as the assassins closed in. The council screamed in terror, scrambling behind their seats. The high speaker shouted for more protection, but no one answered. Every guard in the chamber fell one by one. Their cries cut short. The assassins moved with cold purpose, and their path pointed directly at Marcus Hall. But Marcus did not move. He sat calmly, eyes steady, hands resting on the table. Only when the first assassin leapt toward him did Marcus stand. What followed was something no one in that chamber ever forgot. In a blur of motion, Marcus caught the assassin's wrist mid-strike. With a sharp twist, bones cracked, and the blade clattered to the floor. In the same breath, Marcus pulled the assassin close and snapped his neck with a single strike. The alien corpse fell at his feet, lifeless. The council gasped. This was no act of diplomacy. This was the violence of a soldier, honed and ruthless. Two more assassins lunged. But Marcus moved faster. He ducked beneath the first blade, his elbow crushing the assassin's throat. With a spin, he grabbed the second's knife and drove it into the alien's chest. Their cloaking fields flickered as they fell dead, revealing faces twisted in rage. The council stared wide-eyed as the human fought like a predator among prey. He was precise, efficient. Every strike meant to kill. No wasted motion. There was no fear in him, no hesitation, only cold focus. It was the calm of a man who had seen death too many times before. The last assassin tried to retreat, cloak flickering, but Marcus hurled the stolen blade across the chamber. The weapon flew like lightning, piercing the assassin through the back. He staggered, choked, and fell, his body twitching before going still. The chamber fell silent. Only the sound of alarms outside remained, echoing like distant drums. The council members looked at Marcus in horror. The black uniform of a diplomat was now soaked in enemy blood. You are no diplomat," whispered the feathered senator. Trembling, Marcus bent down, wiping the blade clean with a fallen assassin's cloak. Then he lifted his eyes, sharp and cold as steel. "I am what I was trained to be," he said simply. "The Council dared not speak, but fear spread among them. If Marcus Halley could kill so swiftly, what else could he do? Had the humans sent a warrior disguised as a diplomat? Or had they always known such a day would come? The High Speaker finally found his voice, shaking with rage and fear. Who are you, human? What are you really? But Marcus only stared at the fallen assassins, as though the answer was written in their blood. He turned his gaze back to the council and spoke in a voice that chilled the room. They did not come for you, he repeated. They came for me, and yet no one dared ask the most frightening question. Why? The shadows outside the doors had vanished, but the true darkness remained in the chamber. The realization dawned on every alien present. The enemy had not risked attacking the council for conquest. They had risked everything for one purpose: killing the human. But why was a single human worth so much death? The chamber lights flickered once more, shadows dancing on the walls. And in the silence between alarms, one thought echoed in every mind, wherever Marcus Halley stood. Death was never far behind. The humans' warning, the council chamber was silent except for the fading alarms. The bodies of assassins lay across the crystal floor, their cloaking armor flickering like broken shadows. Alien leaders stared at Marcus Halley, the human who had moved like death itself. No one spoke, no one even breathed loudly, as if the wrong sound might draw his cold gaze. At last the High Speaker found his voice, trembling. You lied to us, he said. You came here not as a diplomat, but as a killer. His words shook, half accusation, half fear. But Marcus did not flinch. He only cleaned the blood from his hands with a strip of cloth. I warned you, Marcus said quietly, his voice low but clear. They are not here for you. His eyes scanned the chamber slowly, each alien shrinking under his calm stare. They are here for me. The council erupted again, voices clashing in fear and anger. Why would anyone risk an attack on the council just for you? What secret are you hiding? This is proof humans cannot be trusted. But Marcus lifted his hand, and silence fell once more. He walked to the center of the chamber, stepping over the fallen assassins without pause. His black boots echoed against the crystal floor, each step heavy, deliberate. The lights above flickered again, making his shadow stretch long and thin across the walls. He looked like a figure carved from war itself. You must stay inside this chamber, Marcus said, his tone flat. No matter what happens outside, do not leave, do not run, do not call for ships. His words were not a suggestion, they were an order. The council members shifted nervously, unused to being commanded. Insectoid Senator clattered his mandibles in defiance. You dare order us, human? We are the council, we rule the stars. Marcus turned his gaze toward him, sharp and cold. Then rule from your seats and live, Marcus replied. Step outside, and you will die before you take 10 breaths. The chamber grew still again. For a brief moment, everyone believed him, not because of his words, but because of the weight in his voice. Marcus Halley was not a man who guessed. He was a man who knew. The feathered senator, still trembling, dared to whisper. Who are they? These assassins? What do they want with you? Marcus hesitated, his eyes narrowing, as if measuring how much truth to reveal. They want silence, he finally said. They want to end me before I can speak. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. What was it Marcus could say that threatened? Entire fleets? What knowledge could a single human carry that made him so dangerous to enemies they did not even recognize? Before the High Speaker could demand more answers, the walls shook again. But this time, it was not the enemy fleet's weapons. It was something stranger. Every sensor in the chamber went dark, every comm cut off. The council world's defenses, broken as they were, still should have shown readings. Now there was nothing. A guard staggered into the chamber, pale and shaking. They're gone, he shouted. The enemy fleet, they vanished from our sensors, as if they never existed. The chamber gasped. Vanished fleets were impossible. No ship could cloak thousands of war vessels. No technology could erase such power from sight, yet. The void above the council world now seemed empty. The fire that had lit the skies had gone out, leaving only silence. "They're hiding," Marcus said softly, almost to himself. "They're not afraid of the council's fleet," he continued, his eyes narrowing. "They're afraid of something else." The council members leaned in, their fear growing. "What do you mean?" The high speaker demanded. Marcus's voice dropped lower, heavy with certainty. "They know what is coming." The aliens stared at him in confusion. "What is coming?" One finally asked, his voice breaking. Marcus looked up toward the ceiling, as though he could see through it into the dark skies beyond. And then he whispered the words that made the chamber grow colder than ice. "Death." A shiver ran through the room. The feathered senator clutched his wings around himself. The reptilian slammed his claws nervously on the table. Even the high speaker leaned back as if to escape the human's voice. "What are you?" "Hiding, Marcus Hawley." The speaker asked again, his voice weaker now. "Why does death follow you?" Marcus finally looked back at them, his eyes sharp, unblinking. "Because I carry it with me," he said. The chamber fell into a silence so deep it hurt. The alien leaders, once so arrogant, now sat frozen like prey before a predator. They began to understand that Marcus was not just a diplomat, not even just a soldier. He was something more, a weapon wearing the skin of a man. And yet, no one dared order him out, because outside, fleets had vanished. Assassins had died, and death itself seemed to wait beyond the walls. If Marcus Hawley told them to stay inside, perhaps it was because only inside they might live, but the question burned inside every alien mind. If the enemy had not come for conquest, if they had come for Marcus alone, then what exactly was Marcus Hawley? The lights flickered again, shadows crawling across the chamber walls, and Marcus whispered one more phrase under his breath, words meant for no one, or perhaps for everyone. "It begins." Death in the shadows. The chamber was quiet, but it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm. Heavy and sharp, the assassins lay broken on the crystal floor, their blood staining the white stone. The council sat frozen in their seats, their eyes locked on Marcus Hawley. He stood in the middle of the hall, tall and calm. His shadow stretched across the glowing walls. The alarms outside had gone silent, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. The enemy fleet had vanished from every sensor, leaving only emptiness in the skies. But Marcus's warning still echoed in the air. "Death is coming." A shiver ran through the chamber. Senators who once shouted in anger now whispered in fear. "What does he mean? Is this human cursed? Why do shadows follow him?" The high speaker tried to rise, his long robes trembling around him. "You will explain this, human," he demanded. Though his voice shook, "You will tell us who you are, and why. They risked everything to kill you here." But before Marcus could answer, the lights flickered again, the crystal walls darkened. The glowing symbols of the council seal faded. The chamber sank into half-darkness. Long shadows crawling across the floor. A cold wind swept through the hall, though no door had opened. Senators clutched their robes tighter, their bodies shaking from more than fear. From the far corner of the room came a sound, a scrape, soft, dragging. Every head turned, eyes searching. But nothing was there. Another scrape came, this time behind them. The council gasped, spinning around. The chamber was sealed, but something was already inside. The shadows moved unnaturally, stretching too long, bending where they should not bend. One of the feathered senators screamed as a dark shape broke free of the wall. It looked like a figure cloaked in mist, faceless, moving without sound. The guards who remained opened fire, beams of light flashing. But the shots passed through the figure as though it was smoke. The council fell into chaos again, some trying to flee toward the sealed doors. But the shadows multiplied, one after another stepping free from the walls. They walked like hunters circling prey, their faceless heads turning toward Marcus. "Not assassins," Marcus said coldly. "Something worse." The nearest shadow lunged at him. Marcus caught its arm, but it felt like gripping smoke, shifting, twisting. Still, his strength forced it down, his knee slamming into where its chest should be. The shadow shrieked, a sound not made by any living throat. Then it melted into black dust at his feet. The council cried out in horror. What are these things? Demons? Weapons? Marcus did not look back. He fought another shadow, this time pulling a weapon from a fallen assassin's corpse. With a sharp strike, he tore the shadow apart, its body dissolving into nothing. But for everyone that fell, two more seemed to appear. The chamber was filling with them, creeping closer, their cold presence pressing against every alien heart. The high speaker clutched the edge of the table, his eyes wide with terror. They want you, he whispered, staring at Marcus. They only want you. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his voice low. They were sent to erase me, he said. To erase what I know. The council shivered at his words. Erase him? What knowledge could make the universe send shadows instead of armies? One of the reptilian senators, trembling with rage and fear, slammed his claws down. You brought this curse into our chamber, he shouted. You are the reason death walks among us. Marcus's gaze turned to him, calm, sharp. No, he said. I am the reason you are still alive. The shadows surged again, rushing Marcus all at once. He moved like lightning, twisting, striking, breaking them apart with bare hands and stolen blades. Each time he destroyed one, his movements were brutal but precise. The council could hardly believe they were watching the same man who had entered as a diplomat. He was no diplomat. He was a weapon forged in silence, a man who wore death-like a second skin. Still, the council realized the truth with horror. Marcus could fight them, but the shadows were endless. How long before even he fell? The feathered senator leaned close to the high speaker, whispering in terror. If he falls, we all die. The speaker gripped the edge of the table harder, finally seeing what they had refused to believe. This human was not just dangerous. He was their only hope. Marcus finally forced the last shadow against the wall. Shoving his blade through it, it dissolved with a scream that echoed long after it vanished. He stood in the center again, chest rising, but his face still calm. He looked at the council, his voice steady. This is only the beginning. The chamber was silent again. The senators stared at him, their eyes wide, their fear growing. They realized now that the enemy had not sent ships to destroy the council. The ships were only a distraction. The true attack had already been inside, and it was all to kill the human standing before them. Marcus wiped the blade clean, his calm voice breaking the silence. Stay in your seats, he said. If you leave, the shadows will follow you, and none of you will survive. The council obeyed without question this time, their power, their pride, their arrogance, all drowned in the terror of what they had seen, and in their hearts, one truth began to form. They had not been sitting beside a man. They had been sitting beside death itself. The hidden past the chamber smelled of smoke and blood. The shadows had vanished into dust, but their cries still echoed in every ear. The senators sat trembling in their seats, their faces pale with fear, and in the middle of it all stood Marcus Halle, calm, silent, as if this chaos was nothing new. The high speaker leaned forward, his voice breaking. No more riddles, human, he said. Who are you? What are you? Every senator's eyes fixed on Marcus. He had saved them, but also terrified them. The galaxy's most powerful rulers now looked at a single man with the fear they reserved only for monsters. Marcus did not answer at once. He placed the bloodied blade down on the crystal table, the sound sharp in the silence. Then he straightened his shoulders, his voice steady. You think I am a diplomat, he said, but I am something else. The feathered senator whispered. An assassin? Marcus shook his head. Not an assassin, he said coldly. A soldier. But the word felt too small for what they had seen, so Marcus continued, his voice low but filled with weight. I was once part of a program that did not exist on any record. A force created for wars that never reached your ears. His gaze swept across them, We were called the Black Envoys. The chamber grew still. The name meant nothing to them. But the way Marcus said it made every heart tighten. He spoke as if he carried the ghosts of that name on his back. He continued, "We were trained not to win battles, but to end them before they began." The reptilian senator leaned forward. His eyes narrow. End them? How? Marcus's voice sharpened. By silencing threats, by cutting out wars at the root, by removing leaders before their armies could march. His words were simple, but heavy with death. We were peacekeepers. In the darkest way, the council gasped. They realized now why he fought like a predator. He was no stranger to death. He had lived in it. The High Speaker's voice trembled. "You mean, you were trained to kill leaders like us?" Marcus did not deny it. "If Earth believed the Council to be a threat, you would not be alive right now," he said without emotion. The senators recoiled in horror. To hear such truth spoken so plainly shook them. They had feared humans were dangerous, but now they understood they were right. Earth had sent not just a diplomat, but a weapon disguised in diplomacy. The feathered senator's voice cracked as he whispered, "Why send you here then? Why place death at our table?" Marcus's eyes darkened. "Because humanity suspected betrayal," he said. "And if betrayal came, I was here to make sure no one left this chamber alive." The chamber erupted with cries of outrage. "You dare! You would slaughter us all." But Marcus raised his hand and silence fell like a blade. His face was calm, but his words were sharp. "Do not mistake me," he said. "I was not sent to start a war. I was sent to prevent one." The council members shivered. Prevent war by being ready to unleash death at the first sign of betrayal. They realized Earth's strategy. Where diplomacy failed, fear would succeed. The reptilian senator slammed his tail against the floor. "So the humans are tyrants after all." He roared. "They came to our stars with honeyed words, but hid knives behind their backs." But Marcus's gaze cut into him, cold and unwavering. "No," Marcus said. "We came because we know what walks in your shadows. We came because we knew one day it would come for us all." The senators froze. "What do you mean?" asked the High Speaker, his voice thin. Marcus stepped closer to the crystal wall, his hand brushing against its surface. "The assassins, the shadows, the fleet, they are not yours. They are not mine. They belong to something older, something that hides in the dark places between stars." He turned back to face them. "And I was trained to be ready for them." The feathered senator's wings trembled. "You knew this day would come." Marcus nodded slowly. Every mission, every kill, every night spent in silence. It was all to prepare for this. I was not placed here by chance. I was placed here because I am the only one who knows how to survive when death itself walks through your walls. The chamber was quiet again. The senators stared at him, some with horror, some with awe. He had revealed enough to terrify them, but still not enough to answer every question. Marcus Halle was both their shield and their executioner, and the line between the two felt thinner than a breath. The High Speaker finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Human, if you are what you say, then what happens now?" Marcus's eyes narrowed, his voice like steel. "Now," he said, "you sit, you wait, and you pray, because the real enemy has not yet shown its face." The words struck like thunder across the chamber. The senators, who once thought themselves rulers of the stars, now sat small, powerless, and all of them realized a truth they had never wanted to face. The human was not their enemy. He was the only thing standing between them and a darkness far greater. But still, deep inside their hearts, one fear burned, brighter than the rest. What if Marcus Halle decided they were not worth saving? The enemy revealed the crystal chamber, trembled once more. This time it was not the sound of bombs or ships, but a deep vibration that came from above, like the growl of a beast. The senators looked upward in fear, their hearts pounding. Marcus Halle did not move, his eyes fixed on the ceiling as though he had been waiting for this moment. "The shadows were only the beginning," Marcus said coldly. The real enemy is here now. The High Speaker rose from his seat, robe shaking. Explain yourself, human. Who dares attack the Council world? Marcus turned his sharp gaze toward him, his voice heavy. They are called the Veilburn, he said, and they do not come for planets, they come for people like me. The chamber gasped. The Veilburn? Whispered the feathered senator. I have heard that name in Forbidden's texts. Beings from beyond the rim, hunters of souls. Marcus nodded once. They were thought to be myths, but myths often hide truths too dangerous to record. Before anyone could reply, the chamber shook violently. Above the planet, an enormous ship appeared. Decloaking with a sickening shimmer, it was not like any vessel the Council had ever seen. Its surface shifted like liquid metal, flowing and reforming as though it was alive. Dark light pulsed from its core. A heartbeat of something ancient and terrible. The Council screamed. This is impossible. No empire builds ships like this. But Marcus remained calm. They are not from any empire, he said. They are from the dark between stars, and they want me dead. The reptilian senator slammed his claws on the table. Why you, human? What are you hiding that makes you worth a fleet? Marcus's eyes narrowed, his voice low and steady. Because I know how to kill them. The chamber froze. Those words carried a weight heavier than any weapon. Marcus stepped closer to the crystal wall, staring up at the alien ship that loomed over the world. They fear me because I survived them once, years ago, on a forgotten battlefield where my entire unit was slaughtered. He paused, his jaw tight. I was the only one who walked away. The Council's fear deepened. If these monsters feared Marcus, then perhaps his existence itself was a threat to them. The feathered senator whispered, Then you are not a diplomat. You are bait. Marcus did not deny it. His silence was answer enough. The alien ship moved closer, its shadow falling across the Council city. Its weapons glowed with strange energy. Nothing like plasma or lasers. This was something older, darker. Made to erase entire worlds in silence. The Council panicked. Our fleets cannot fight this. We are defenseless. But Marcus spoke calm as stone. Not defenseless, he said. Not while humanity still breathes. He lifted his hand, pressing a control hidden in his sleeve. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air outside rippled, space itself bending, and with a flash, a human warship decloaked above the Council world. The chamber shook again as the massive ship revealed itself. It was a Terran dreadnought, dark and enormous, its hull covered in scars of past battles. Its guns glowed like the eyes of a predator. Compared to the Council's vessels, it was a monster of steel and fire. The senators gasped, some in awe, some in terror. You brought a warship here? The High Speaker shouted. Marcus's voice cut through the panic, cold and certain. I brought protection, he said, because I knew this day would come. The Veilburn ship turned, its surface shifting, its weapons pulsing. But the human dreadnought answered with its own roar. Charging its cannons, the void above the planet filled with deadly light. The greatest battle the Council had ever witnessed was about to begin. The feathered senator clutched his wings, trembling. That ship, it is only one. It cannot win. But Marcus looked back at him, his expression unreadable. One is all we need, he said. The reptilian senator hissed, his fear turning to rage. You humans brought war into our chamber. You are cursed. Marcus's gaze cut into him like a blade. No, he said. I brought survival. The first blast came. The Veilburn ship fired a beam of black energy. Tearing through the skies, the Council screamed as the world trembled under its force, but the human dreadnought's shields flared, holding strong. Then the Terran guns fired back, light like a storm of suns, slamming into the alien vessel. The chamber shook with every impact, the senators clinging to their seats. They watched with wide eyes as the impossible unfolded. The Council, with all its fleets combined, could not have stood against this enemy. Yet a single human warship held the line, refusing to yield. Marcus turned back to the Council, his voice steady despite the chaos above. "You see now," he said. "You see why we are feared. Why we are hated. Why death walks beside us." He stepped closer to the high speaker, his eyes burning with cold fire. "You thought me a diplomat," he said, "but I was always your last shield." The high speaker stared at him, his pride broken, his voice a whisper. "Then humanity is not here for peace." Marcus leaned forward, his words cutting like a blade. "Humanity is here to survive." Outside, the human dreadnought roared again, its weapons tearing into the Veilburn ship. The enemy vessel shuddered, its dark hull breaking. But Marcus's eyes stayed sharp, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This is not victory," he said. "This is only the beginning." Death looms beside them. The council chamber shook as light from the battle lit the skies above. The alien vessel of the Veilburn pulsed with dark energy, its surface twisting like liquid shadow. The Terran dreadnought stood against it, a wall of steel and fire, its cannons roaring like thunder across the void. The senators clung to their seats, watching in terror, knowing their lives now depended on one human warship. Marcus Hawley did not flinch. He stood tall at the center of the chamber, his sharp eyes fixed on the ceiling as though he could see the fight through the crystal walls. Every blast of the enemy ship made the ground tremble, yet Marcus remained calm. It was as if he had seen this battle long before it began. The feathered senator's voice shook as he whispered, "Can one ship truly stand against that horror?" Marcus turned his gaze toward him, cold and steady. "One ship is enough when it is human," he said, outside. The Veilburn ship released another blast of dark energy. It struck the human dreadnought's shields, making them flare and spark. For a moment, it looked as if the Terran ship would break. The council gasped, some crying out in fear. But then the human vessel surged forward, ignoring the damage, its cannons firing with unstoppable fury. The high speaker gripped the table, sweat shining on his forehead. "This is madness," he whispered. "We are supposed to be the rulers of the stars, yet we hide like children while one human carries our fate." Marcus heard him, his voice sharp as a blade. "You rule with words and titles," he said. "We survive with blood and fire." The chamber fell silent at his words. They all realized the truth. Their council had power, but no strength. It was the humans unwanted, distrusted, feared, who stood against the darkness when no one else could. Outside, the Veilburn ship cracked, pieces of its shifting hull breaking apart. Its scream echoed through space, a sound that shook even the ground beneath the chamber. The Terran dreadnought pressed harder, its cannons tearing through the monster ship's core. The void lit up, with explosions, fire spreading across the Veilburn surface. The senators gasped, hope flickering in their eyes. "They are winning," one cried. But Marcus did not smile, his voice low. "No," he said, "they are only surviving." The Veilburn ship released its final weapon. A storm of black fire burst from its core, spreading like wings across the void. The blast struck the human dreadnought, tearing through its armor, shaking it to its bones. Inside the chamber, the floor shook so violently that senators fell from their seats. The feathered senator cried out, "It cannot hold. The human ship will fall." Marcus turned his head slowly, his eyes like steel. "If it falls, so does your council, so do your worlds," he said. "Pray it does not fall." Then, with a roar that shook the stars, the human dreadnought answered, its main cannon charged. Brighter than suns, it fired a beam of pure destruction straight into the Veilburn's heart. The enemy ship convulsed, its body twisting, breaking, until it finally exploded in a storm of dark fire. The skies lit up like dawn, the shadow gone, the silence returning. The council gasped in disbelief. The monster ship was destroyed. The human vessel still stood, scarred but unbroken. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Marcus Hawley finally turned back to the council. "You see now," he said, his voice calm, steady. "You feared my presence. You doubted my purpose. But without me, without humanity, you would all be dust." The senators sat in silence, unable to argue. They had mocked the humans as dangerous, cursed, too violent to sit among them. But today, death had come for them, and only the humans had stood between the Council and annihilation. The High Speaker rose slowly, his voice weak. "What are you, Marcus Hale? What is humanity?" Marcus stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "We are survivors," he said. "We are the ones who look into the dark and do not run. We are the ones who carry death so that others may live." The senators lowered their heads, their pride broken. The galaxy they ruled was no longer theirs alone. They had seen what one human could do, what one human worship could unleash, and deep inside, they knew the truth. Earth was no small world anymore. Marcus placed his bloody blade back onto the crystal table. His voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried through the chamber like thunder. "Remember this day," he said. "The day death loomed beside you, and it wore a human face." The Council sat frozen, their eyes locked on the human who had just saved them and terrified them in the same breath. And Marcus Hale turned away, his shadow long across the glowing walls. For the Council, the danger had ended, but for Marcus, it had only just begun, because death was never behind him. Death walked beside him, always.